warning alarms screamed through the ship's corridors like dying animals. Captain Taemin gripped his command chair as the vessel shuddered violently. Sparks flew from the control panels and the lights flickered between darkness and blinding red emergency lighting. "We're not going to make it," Mira shouted from the pilot's seat, her hands dancing across the controls. Sweat poured down her face as she fought to keep the ship steady. The view screen showed nothing but the swirling clouds of an unknown planet rushing toward them at impossible speed. Taemin's jaw tightened. He had been a ship captain for 15 years, survived 3 different emergency situations, but nothing like this. The debris field had appeared out of nowhere, tearing through their engine core before they could change course. Now they were falling, and there was nothing anyone could do to stop it. "Everyone, secure yourselves," he ordered into the ship-wide communication system. "Brace for impact." In the medical bay, Dr. Hana strapped herself into the emergency seat, her heart pounding. She was a scientist, not a soldier. She studied alien life from the safety of laboratories, not crashing planets. Her hand shook as she tightened the harness across her chest. The ship hit the atmosphere, and the entire vessel became an oven. The heat shields were damaged, and Hana could feel the temperature rising even inside the protected medical bay. She closed her eyes and thought of her family back on Earth, wondering if she would ever see them again. Engineer Daewon was in the engine room, still trying to divert power to the landing thrusters. He was 50 years old and had fixed more broken ships than most people had flown in, but this was different. The core was completely destroyed. He could smell the burning circuits and melting metal. His fingers flew over the emergency panel, rerouting what little power remained. Come on," he muttered to himself. If he could just give Mira 30 seconds of thruster control, she might be able to slow them down enough to survive the crash. The ship broke through the cloud layer, and suddenly they could see the surface. Massive trees covered the landscape, stretching for miles in every direction. The trees were enormous, bigger than any Earth tree, with trunks as wide as buildings and leaves that glowed with a faint blue light. Mira saw a clearing ahead, barely large enough for the ship. She had one chance. Her hands moved on instinct, years of training taking over where conscious thought failed. She angled the nose up, trying to use the remaining hull plating as a brake against the air. "Thrusters online." Daewon's voice crackled through the communication system. "You've got 20 seconds. 20 seconds. Mira fired everything they had left. The ship groaned and screamed, metal tearing, systems failing. But they were slowing down. Not enough, but maybe, just maybe, enough to survive. The ship hit the ground nose first, then belly flopped with a sound like thunder. It skidded across the clearing, ripping through smaller trees and throwing up massive clouds of dirt and alien vegetation. Taemin felt his body slam against the harness hard enough to crack ribs. The world became a blur of motion and noise and pain, then suddenly silence. Taemin opened his eyes. He was alive. The command deck was destroyed, with panels hanging from the ceiling and exposed wiring sparking randomly. But he was alive. He unstrapped himself with shaking hands and stood up, testing his legs. Everything hurt, but nothing seemed broken. "Sound off," he called out. "Everyone report." Medical bay reporting. Hana's voice came through, weak but steady. "I'm okay. Checking on patients now." "Engineering here," Daewon responded. "Banged up but functional. The ship is not. We're not flying anywhere in this thing." "Pilot seat," Mira said, and Taemin could hear the tears in her voice. "I'm sorry, Captain. I'm so sorry." "You saved our lives, Mira," Taemin said firmly. "You got us down. Now we survive." Over the next hour, the crew gathered in the medical bay. Out of 12 people, 8 had survived the initial crash. 4 had died on impact, their sections of the ship taking the worst of the damage. Hana worked on treating injuries while Taemin took stock of their situation. It was not good. The long-range communication system was destroyed. The engines were completely gone. Most of their supplies had been in the cargo bay, which had broken off during the crash and was now scattered across half a mile of forest. They had maybe 2 weeks of food and water, 3 if they rationed carefully. "What about the emergency beacon?" Taemin asked Daewon. The engineer shook his head. "The antenna array is twisted metal. I might be able to rig something, but it'll take time. And even if I do, the nearest human outpost is 40 light years away. Help won't come for months if they even hear us." Taemin looked at his crew. They were scared, hurt, and stranded on an unknown planet. But they were alive, and as long as they were alive, they had a chance. We set up a perimeter around the ship, he said. Gather what supplies we can from the wreckage. Daewon, you work on that beacon. Hana, you catalog anything edible or dangerous in the local environment. Mira, Bora, Sung-ho, you're with me on security. As the sun set on the alien world, they saw it for the first time. The sky turned a deep purple and the 3 moons rose one after another, casting strange triple shadows across the forest. The glowing leaves of the massive trees began to pulse with light, creating patterns that moved through the forest like waves. It was beautiful. It was also terrifying, because as darkness fell, they heard the sounds. Deep, rumbling growls that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. Something was moving through the forest, something large. Taemin saw the claw marks then, gouged deep into the bark of nearby trees. The marks were fresh and placed high up, far higher than any earth animal could reach. We're not alone here, Hana whispered, staring at the claw marks. She had studied xenobiology for 10 years, but she had never seen anything like this. The marks were made by something with incredible strength and size. That night, nobody slept well. They took turns on watch, weapons ready, listening to the sounds of the alien forest. Something roared in the distance, a sound that made their bones vibrate and their hearts race with primal fear. Taemin stood at the edge of their camp, looking out into the darkness. Somewhere out there was something that could tear them apart. Somewhere out there was a predator, and they had just crashed into its territory. The survival clock had started, and they were already running out of time. The first attack came on the 3rd night. Taemin was checking the perimeter when he heard Sung-ho scream. He ran toward the sound, his weapon raised, and saw something that made his blood freeze. A massive creature stood at the edge of their camp, illuminated by the emergency lights. It was easily 12 feet tall, with 4 arms ending in claws as long as knives. Its body was covered in scales that looked like black glass, and patterns of light pulsed across its skin in waves of blue and green. The creature's head was reptilian, with eyes that caught the light and reflected it back like mirrors. Its mouth opened, showing rows of sharp teeth, and it made a clicking sound that echoed through the clearing. Sung-ho fired his weapon, and the energy blast hit the creature's shoulder. It barely flinched. Instead, it moved with shocking speed, crossing 10 feet in a single leap. Its claws swiped through the air where Sung-ho had been standing a moment before. Fall back, Taemin shouted, firing his own weapon. More lights appeared in the forest, more patterns moving between the trees. They were not facing one creature. They were facing many. The crew retreated into the ship's remains, sealing the medical bay door behind them. Outside, they could hear the creatures moving around, testing the hull with their claws. The sound of metal scraping against metal filled the night. What are those things? Mira asked, her voice shaking. Hana was at the window, watching the creatures through the reinforced glass. Her scientific mind was racing, cataloging details even through her fear. Forearms, bipedal stance, coordinated movement, bioluminescent communication patterns. These were not simple animals. They're apex predators, she said quietly. And they're hunting us. The creatures circled the ship for 2 hours before finally leaving. When dawn came, the crew emerged to find claw marks covering every surface of the wreckage. The creatures had been testing their defenses, looking for weak points. We can't stay here, Bora said. She was the medical officer, trained to save lives, but she knew a losing situation when she saw one. This wreckage is a trap. We need to find somewhere defensible, Taemin agreed. They spent the day searching and found a cave system about half a mile from the crash site. The caves were natural, carved into a rocky hillside with a narrow entrance that could be defended. They moved their supplies in shifts, always watching the forest for movement. Daewon set up his equipment in the deepest part of the cave, working on the emergency beacon. He had managed to salvage parts from 3 different communication systems, and he thought he could create something that might send a signal. But it would take time, and time was something they did not have much of. The second attack came on the 7th day. This time the creatures came during daylight, 6 of them, moving through the forest with coordinated precision. Hana watched them approach from the cave entrance, and she noticed something important. They were using hand signals, complex gestures that the others responded to. They were communicating. They're not animals, she told Taemin. Look at how they move. That's tactical thinking. That's intelligence. Taemin watched the creatures split up, surrounding the cave entrance from 3 different directions. She was right. These things were smart, maybe as smart as humans. That made them even more dangerous. The battle was brief but brutal. The creatures tried to force their way into the cave, but the narrow entrance worked in the humans' favor. They could only come one at a time, and energy weapons at close range were effective. But it cost them. Engineer Kyung took a claw to the chest and died before Bora could even reach him. Jay, one of the younger crew members, was pulled out of the cave entrance and they could not save him. After the creatures retreated, Taemin counted their numbers. They were down to 6 people now. 6 people against an unknown number of intelligent predators, stranded on an alien world with no hope of rescue for months. That night, Hana could not sleep. She kept thinking about the creatures, about the way they moved and communicated. She had devoted her life to studying alien life, but she had never imagined anything like this. On Earth, intelligence had evolved in primates, in dolphins, in certain birds. But here it had evolved in apex predators. What did that mean for their chances of survival? She went to the cave entrance where Mira was standing watch. The young pilot had not been the same since the crash. She blamed herself for every death, every injury. Hana could see the guilt eating away at her. "It's not your fault," Hana said softly. "I was going too fast through that sector," Mira replied without looking at her. "I thought I could shave 3 hours off our route." 3 hours. And now 8 people are dead because of my arrogance. 8 people are alive because of your skill, Hana corrected. Anyone else would have crashed nose first into the planet at full speed. You got us down in one piece. You gave us a chance. Mira did not respond, but Hana saw her shoulders straighten slightly. Over the next week, Hana began a project of her own. She started documenting the creatures, which she began calling Vrexians after the Latin word for breach. She recorded their patterns, their movements, their communication methods. She noticed that the light patterns on their skin changed based on their behavior. Red seemed to indicate aggression. Blue was curiosity. Green was calm or neutral. She also noticed something else. The attacks were becoming more frequent, but also more desperate. The Vrexians were not giving up. They kept coming back, kept testing the defenses, kept searching for a way in. That level of persistence was unusual for predators. Most predators moved on when prey proved too difficult or dangerous to hunt, unless they were not hunting for food. Unless they were searching for something else. They want something, Hana told Taemin one evening. This isn't normal predator behavior. They're focused on us specifically and they won't give up. What could we possibly have that they want? Taemin asked. Hana did not have an answer. Not yet. On the 15th day, Daewon shouted from the back of the cave. Everyone rushed to see what had happened. He was sitting at his makeshift workstation, tears running down his face, but he was smiling. I got a signal out, he said. I boosted the beacon with the ship's emergency power cell. It's weak, but it's broadcasting. If anyone is listening, they'll hear us. How long? Taemin asked. The nearest Earth Fleet Patrol route is 40 light-years away. Even if they heard us immediately, even if they diverted a fast ship, we're looking at 2 months minimum. 2 months. 60 days. Taemin looked around the cave at his exhausted, injured crew. They had food for maybe 3 more weeks if they rationed. They had already lost 6 people. The Vrexians showed no signs of stopping. 2 months might as well have been 2 years. That night, the Vrexians came again, but this time they did not attack. They gathered at the tree line, maybe 15 of them, and one stood in front of the others. It was massive, even larger than the others, with scars covering its scales and patterns that glowed a deep, angry red. The Alpha, the leader of the pack. It stared at the cave entrance for a long time, then raised its head and roared. The sound shook the ground and sent rocks falling from the cave ceiling. It was not just a threat. It was a promise. Hana watched the Alpha and felt cold fear settle in her stomach. They were being hunted by something intelligent, organized, and relentless, and she still did not know why. The food situation was becoming critical. 3 weeks after the crash, their supplies were nearly gone. Taemin made the decision that someone had to go out and search for anything edible in the forest. It was dangerous, but starvation was a certainty if they did nothing. Mira volunteered immediately. She always volunteered for the dangerous jobs, still trying to make up for the crash that haunted her dreams. Bora, the medical officer, went with her. 2 people, light weapons, and a scanning device that could detect toxic compounds in plants. They left at dawn when the Vrexians seemed least active. The forest was strange and beautiful in the morning light. The massive trees stretched toward the purple sky, and small creatures moved through the branches, making sounds like wind chimes. Everything glowed faintly. as if the entire ecosystem was bioluminescent. "It's actually pretty," Bora said, scanning a cluster of mushrooms growing on a fallen log. "If we weren't being hunted by giant monsters, this would be an amazing discovery." "If we survive, maybe they'll name it after us," Mira replied, trying to smile. The Mira Bora Death Forest. They followed a stream deeper into the woods, collecting samples of plants that seemed safe. The scanning device beeped green for several types of fruit and root vegetables. It was not much, but it might buy them another week. That was when they heard it, a sound like crying but not quite human. It was high-pitched and desperate, coming from somewhere ahead. Mira and Bora exchanged looks. Every instinct said to turn back, to return to the cave. But the sound was so pitiful, so full of pain, that they found themselves moving toward it. They found the young Vrexian trapped at the bottom of a mudslide. It was small, maybe 4 feet tall, with scales that had not yet darkened to the black of the adults. Its patterns flickered weakly, mostly yellow and orange, and one of its hind legs was bent at a wrong angle. It had fallen into the mud and could not climb out. When it saw them, it tried to back away but only sank deeper. "Oh no," Bora whispered. The young Vrexian made that crying sound again, and Mira felt her heart break. "It was just a child, a baby, scared and hurt and alone." "We should kill it," Bora said, but her voice was shaking. "It's the smart thing to do." "It's one of them." Mira stared at the young Vrexian. It stared back at her with large eyes that were not quite reptilian and not quite mammalian. There was something in those eyes, awareness, fear, intelligence. This was not an animal. This was a child who was hurt and terrified. "I can't," Mira said. She set down her weapon and moved toward the mud. "Mira, don't." Bora grabbed her arm. "If the adults find us with their young, they'll tear us apart." "They're already trying to tear us apart," Mira replied. She pulled free and waded into the mud. The young Vrexian struggled, making clicking sounds of distress, but it was too weak to fight. Mira reached it and carefully worked her arms under its body. It was lighter than she expected, maybe 60 pounds. The young Vrexian's patterns flashed red for a moment, then shifted to a confused blue. It clicked at her almost like a question. Mira started pulling them both out of the mud. "What are you doing?" Bora asked, but she was already reaching down to help. Together they pulled the young Vrexian out of the mudslide. It lay on the ground, breathing heavily, its injured leg clearly causing pain. Up close, Mira could see that it was definitely young. Its scales were softer, its claws smaller. It looked up at them with those strange, intelligent eyes. "We take it back," Mira said. "We hide it in the cave. The others don't need to know." "Mira, this is insane." "Probably," Mira agreed. "But I'm not leaving a child to die in the mud. I don't care what species it is." They wrapped the young Vrexian in a thermal blanket and carried it back to the cave. They managed to sneak it into a small side chamber without anyone seeing. Mira sat with it while Bora gathered medical supplies. The young Vrexian watched them with wary eyes as Bora examined its leg. The bone was cracked but not completely broken. Bora wrapped it in a splint made from salvaged materials, and the young Vrexian clicked softly, its patterns shifting to a pale green. "I think that means thank you," Mira whispered. They gave it water, and it drank desperately. They tried different foods from their supplies, and it ate the dried protein bars without hesitation. As it ate, its patterns became brighter, healthier. It made a soft chirping sound that almost sounded like contentment. "We're going to die for this," Bora said, but she was smiling as she adjusted the splint. They kept the young Vrexian hidden for 3 days. Mira called it Small One, and she spent hours with it whenever she could sneak away. Small One learned quickly. It understood that they were hiding it, and it stayed quiet when other humans passed by. It watched everything with curious eyes and tried to mimic human gestures. On the 3rd day, Captain Taman found them. He stood in the entrance to the side chamber, staring at Small One, his face unreadable. Small One looked back at him and made a nervous clicking sound, its patterns turning yellow with fear. "Explain," Taman said quietly. "Right now." Mira told him everything. The mudslide, the decision to save it, the last 3 days. As she spoke, Taman's expression grew harder. "Do you understand what you've done?" he asked. "Those attacks, the constant harassment, the alpha roaring every night. They're not hunting us for food. They're searching for this, for their child." "I know," Mira said, "but I couldn't leave it to die." "So instead, you've given them a reason to never stop hunting us," Taman said. He drew his weapon. "We kill it now and maybe they'll leave us alone." "No," Mira stepped between the weapon and Small One. Behind her, Small One's patterns flashed red and it made a hissing sound, protecting her just as she was protecting it. Hana appeared in the doorway, drawn by the raised voices. She saw Small One and her eyes went wide. Then she saw the weapon in Taemin's hand. "Wait," she said. "Don't kill it, please." "Give me one good reason why," Taemin demanded. "Because it's our only bargaining chip," Hana said quickly. "You're right, they're searching for this one. Which means they value it. Which means we can negotiate. Negotiate. They're animals." "No, they're not," Hana said firmly. "I've been studying them. They communicate with complex patterns. They coordinate attacks. They use tools. They're intelligent, Taemin. As intelligent as we are. And if they're intelligent, we can find a way to talk to them." Taemin looked between Hana, Mira, and Small One. The young Vrexian was pressed against Mira's legs, its patterns a frightened yellow, but its eyes were alert and aware. It understood that its life was being decided. "You have 1 week," Taemin said, finally lowering his weapon. 1 week to figure out how to communicate with them. If we can't find a way to coexist, the young one dies, and we use the body as a peace offering. Understood? Hana nodded. Understood. I'll need to work with Small One directly, study its communication patterns, learn how they think. Over the next week, Hana spent every spare moment with Small One. She documented its patterns, tested its responses to different stimuli, tried to establish a basic vocabulary. Small One was remarkably intelligent. It learned to associate certain human words with actions. It understood pointing. It even tried to mimic human speech, though its vocal structure could only produce clicks and chirps. But the attacks did not stop. If anything, they got worse. The Vrexians came every night now, and the Alpha was always there leading them. Its roars shook the cave, and its patterns blazed with angry red light. On the 7th day, Daewon burst into the main chamber with news. "I picked up a response to our beacon. A rescue ship heard us." "They're coming!" "How long?" Taemin asked. 6 weeks. They're pushing their engines hard, but 6 weeks minimum. 6 weeks. 42 more days. Taemin looked at his exhausted crew. They had maybe 1 week of food left. The Vrexians were getting more aggressive every day, and they had the Alpha's child hidden in their cave. "We won't last 6 weeks like this," Sung-ho said what everyone was thinking. Taemin knew he was right. Something had to change, or they would all die waiting for a rescue that would arrive too late. The siege began on the 33rd day. The Vrexians came at sunset, but this time they did not attack immediately. They surrounded the cave completely, cutting off every escape route. Taemin counted at least 15 of them through the night vision scope, and he knew there were probably more hidden in the trees. The Alpha stood at the front, its massive form illuminated by the triple moons, its patterns blazing red like fire. "They're not leaving this time," Sung-ho said from his position at the cave entrance. "This is it. The final push." Inside the cave, the crew prepared for what they all knew might be their last stand. They had 6 people left: Taemin, Hana, Daewon, Mira, Bora, and Sung-ho. They had limited ammunition for their weapons. Their food supplies were down to 3 days, and they had Small One, hidden in the back chamber, chirping nervously as if it could sense what was coming. "They're going to test our defenses first," Taemin said, checking his weapon, looking for weak points. "When they find one, they'll all come at once. We hold the entrance. We don't let them get inside." The first probe came within an hour. 3 Vrexians rushed the entrance from different angles. Their movements coordinated perfectly. Taemin and Sung-ho fired, and the energy blast drove them back, but not before one got close enough to rake its claws across the rock face, showering them with debris. "They're testing our firing patterns," Hana observed from behind them. "Learning our response times." She was right. The Vrexians were not mindlessly attacking. They were gathering intelligence, planning their assault. It was terrifying and impressive in equal measure. The second probe came from above. 2 Vrexians had climbed the cliff face and tried to enter through a crack in the cave ceiling. Mira spotted them and fired upward, forcing them to retreat, but now they knew the cave had multiple entry points. "We can't defend everything," Bora said, her voice tight with stress. "There's too many of them and too few of us." The real attack came at midnight. 6 Vrexians rushed the main entrance while 3 more tried the ceiling, and 2 tried to dig through the side wall where the rock was softer. It was chaos. Energy weapons fired in all directions, lighting up the cave like lightning. The sound was deafening. Sung-ho fought at the entrance, his weapon blazing. A Vrexian got past his firing arc and its claws slashed across his chest. He went down hard, blood spreading across his uniform. Bora dragged him back while Taemin took his position. How bad? Taemin shouted over the noise. Bad! Bora was already working, her hands moving with practiced efficiency. He's losing blood fast. The attack lasted 20 minutes before the Vrexians pulled back. They left claw marks everywhere, and parts of the cave wall had been torn away. Sung-ho was unconscious, his breathing shallow. Bora worked on him for 2 hours, using their last medical supplies to seal the wounds. He'll live, she finally said, exhausted. But he can't fight. He needs rest and antibiotics we don't have. They were down to 5 combat-ready people. The attacks continued through the night. Not full assaults, just constant harassment. A Vrexian would rush the entrance, forcing them to fire and waste ammunition. Another would throw rocks from a distance, keeping them alert and exhausted. They were being worn down methodically. By dawn, everyone was exhausted. They had been awake for over 30 hours straight. Taemin knew they could not keep this up much longer. The Vrexians could take turns resting. The humans could not. In the back chamber, Mira sat with Small One. The young Vrexian was agitated, its patterns flickering rapidly between colors. Every time it heard the alpha roar, it would respond with its own call, softer but insistent. What are you saying? Mira asked it softly. Are you calling for help or trying to tell them something? Small One looked at her with those intelligent eyes and made a complex series of clicks and chirps. Its patterns shifted to blue, then green, then blue again. Mira had spent enough time with it to recognize that pattern. Blue was curiosity or questioning. Green was peace. It was trying to communicate something. Hana came to check on them, and she saw what Mira saw. It's trying to tell them we're not enemies, she said suddenly. Look at the patterns. Every time the alpha roars in red aggression, Small One responds in blue and green, questioning the aggression, suggesting peace. But they're not listening, Mira said. No, Hana agreed, because the alpha can't see what we've done. It only knows we have its child. From their perspective, we kidnapped it. The second night of the siege was worse. The Vrexians brought the entire pack and they attacked in waves. 5 would rush while 5 more provided covering actions, and 5 more waited to exploit any opening. It was military tactics planned and executed with precision. Daewon took a claw to the shoulder while defending the side tunnel. Mira pulled him back and the wound was not as bad as Sung-ho's, but he could not use his right arm. They were down to 4.5 fighters now. During a brief pause in the fighting, Taemin gathered everyone who could move. Our ammunition is at 20%. Our food is gone. Sung-ho might not make it without real medical care, and that rescue ship is still 5 weeks away. We're not going to last 5 weeks, Daewon said, stating what everyone knew. No, Taemin agreed. We're not. So we need to change the situation. How? Bora asked. We give them what they want, Taemin said. He looked at Mira. We return Small One to the Alpha. They'll kill whoever delivers it, Mira said immediately. Probably, Taemin agreed. Which is why I'll do it. I'm the captain. This is my responsibility. No, Hana said firmly. There's a better way. We don't just return Small One. We make sure they understand what we've done, that we helped it, healed it, protected it. And how do we make them understand that? Taemin asked. We don't speak their language. Small One does, Hana said. And it's been trying to tell them all along. We just need to let them see us with it. See that it's healthy and safe. See that we're not the enemy. That's insane, Bora said. The moment we step outside, they'll attack. Maybe, Hana said. Or maybe they'll hesitate. Maybe they'll listen to Small One. It's the only chance we have. Mira stood up. I'll do it. I'm the one who saved Small One. I should be the one to return it. No, Taemin said. We both go. If they kill us, the rest of you seal the cave and hold out as long as you can. The rescue ship will get here eventually. Over the next day, they prepared. Small One's leg had healed well under Bora's care. It could walk normally now, almost ready to run. It seemed to sense that something was about to happen, and its patterns showed a mix of emotions that Hana was still learning to read. The Alpha roared again that night, closer than ever. The sound shook loose rock from the ceiling. It was not just a challenge anymore. It was grief and rage and desperation all mixed together. The Alpha was a parent who had lost its child, and it would tear apart anything to get that child back. Taemin stood at the cave entrance, looking out at the Vrexians gathered in the darkness. Their patterns glowed like a field of angry fireflies, all blazing red. In the center stood the Alpha, larger than all the others, scarred from 100 battles, staring at the cave with eyes that held a parent's fury. "Tomorrow at dawn," Taemin said. "We try Hana's way. We walk out there with Small One and we hope they understand mercy. And if they don't?" Daiwan asked. "Then at least we try to do the right thing," Taemin replied. That night, Small One slept curled up against Mira, its patterns a soft, peaceful green. It trusted them completely. It had no idea that tomorrow, they would walk it out to face the Alpha and hope that trust could bridge the gap between two species that had been trying to kill each other. Mira did not sleep. She held Small One and thought about her choices. She had saved this creature because it was the right thing to do, even though it might cost her everything. She had no regrets. If she died tomorrow, at least she would die knowing she had shown kindness when it would have been easier to show cruelty. That had to count for something. That had to mean something. Dawn came too quickly. The sun rose slowly over the alien forest, painting the purple sky with streaks of orange and gold. Taemin stood at the cave entrance watching the Vrexians. They had not left during the night. The entire pack was still there waiting. The Alpha stood at the front, its massive form casting a long shadow across the clearing. "Last chance to change your mind," Taemin said to Hana, though he knew she would not. "No," Hana replied. She was holding Small One, who chirped nervously and clung to her with its 4 arms. "This is the only way forward. We can't win a war. But maybe we can find peace." Mira insisted on coming too. "I saved Small One, I should be there." Taemin wanted to refuse, but he understood. This was about more than survival now. This was about proving that humans were more than just survivors. They were capable of compassion, even when it might cost them everything. They set down their weapons at the cave entrance. Bora argued against it, but Taemin was firm. "We go out there with weapons, we're a threat. We go out empty-handed carrying their child, maybe they'll see us differently." Small One seemed to understand what was happening. Its patterns shifted to a bright blue, and it made a series of complex clicks and chirps that echoed across the clearing. The Vrexians heard it. Their patterns changed, flickering from red to orange to yellow. "Uncertainty. It's calling to them," Hana whispered, telling them we're safe. They walked out of the cave together, moving slowly. Taemin went first, his hands raised and empty. Hana followed, carrying Small One. Mira walked beside them, her heart pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. The Vrexians reacted immediately. The pack moved forward, surrounding them in a semicircle. Their claws extended, their patterns blazing red. Warning signals, threat displays, but they did not attack. Not yet. The Alpha moved through the pack, and up close it was even more massive than Taemin had realized. It stood at least 14 feet tall, with scars crossing its scales like a map of old battles. Its eyes were golden and intelligent, and they fixed on Small One with an intensity that made the air feel heavy. Small One chirped excitedly and struggled in Hana's arms. She knelt down slowly and set it on the ground. Small One's injured leg had healed, but it still limped slightly as it moved forward, halfway between the humans and the Alpha. The Alpha took one step forward, then another. Its claws were extended, each one as long as a human forearm and sharp enough to cut through metal. Those claws had killed 2 of their crew members. They could kill all 3 of them in seconds. Taemin fought every instinct that screamed at him to run. He stood still, hands raised, making himself vulnerable. Showing trust, Small One chirped again, and its patterns exploded with color, blue and green and yellow, cycling rapidly in complex sequences. It was speaking, telling a story. Hana recognized some of the patterns from her weeks of observation. The blue-green combination meant safety. The yellow-blue meant help. Small One was telling its story, how it had been trapped, injured, saved. The Alpha stopped 5 feet away. Its head tilted, studying them. Its patterns flickered, showing the internal struggle. Red anger warred with blue curiosity and orange confusion. Then Small One did something remarkable. It moved back to Hana and touched her leg with one small hand. Then it moved to the Alpha and touched the Alpha's leg, back and forth, connecting them, showing they were the same. Both had protected it. Both were family. Hana's breath caught in her throat. Small One was making introductions. The Alpha's massive head lowered, bringing those golden eyes level with Hana's. This close, she could see the intelligence there, the emotions. This was not an animal. This was a person, A parent who had thought their child was dead? Slowly, carefully, Hana raised one hand. The Alpha's eyes followed the movement. She pointed to herself. Hana, she said softly. Then she pointed to Small One and made a cradling gesture, like holding a baby. The Alpha's pattern shifted to pure blue. Question. Understanding. Small One chirped happily and demonstrated, mimicking how Hana had carried it, how she had wrapped its leg, how she had fed it. The young Vrexian's patterns told the whole story in light and color. The Alpha made a sound deep in its chest. Not a growl. Something else. Its massive clawed hand reached out, moving past Hana toward Small One. For a terrible moment, Taemin thought it would strike. But instead, the Alpha's claws retracted, and it gently touched Small One's head with the back of its hand. Relief. Love. The pattern said it all. Then the Alpha turned back to Hana. Its hand moved toward her, and Taemin tensed, ready to try something desperate and stupid. But the Alpha's claws remained retracted. It touched Hana's forehead with the rough, scaled back of its hand. The same gesture it had used with Small One. Hana understood. Family, she whispered. You're saying we're family now. The Alpha's patterns shifted to green. Peace. Acceptance. Behind them, the pack's patterns changed too, flowing from red to orange to yellow to green like a wave. The tension drained from the clearing. Taemin felt his legs go weak with relief, and he had to lock his knees to stay standing. Small One chirped and bounced between them, its patterns flashing with joy. It touched the Alpha's leg, then ran back to hug Hana's leg, then back to the Alpha, making sure they both understood. You are both my family. Over the next hour, an impossible thing happened. The Vrexians did not leave. Instead, they settled at the edge of the clearing. The Alpha stayed close, watching the humans carefully, but without aggression now. Its patterns were curious blue mixed with cautious yellow. Hana sat on the ground, and Small One immediately climbed into her lap. The Alpha made a clicking sound that might have been amusement. Small One clicked back, and its patterns told another story. Hana could not understand all of it, but she caught enough. Small One was telling about the humans, about their kindness, about being healed and protected. What now? Mira asked softly, afraid to break the moment. Now we wait, Taemin said, and we see if they're willing to coexist. The answer came that afternoon. Several Vrexians left and returned carrying the body of a large animal, something like a six-legged deer. They dropped it near the cave entrance, then backed away. The Alpha's patterns flashed in what Hana was learning to recognize as an offering gesture. They're sharing their hunt, she said, amazed. They're offering us food. It was a turning point. Over the next few days, a careful routine developed. The Vrexians kept their distance but did not leave. They brought food, and the humans shared their water purification tablets when one of the younger Vrexians showed signs of illness from bad water. Bora, with Hana translating through Small One, taught them which water sources were safe. Small One became the bridge between them. It would spend time with the humans, then run to the Alpha and the pack, carrying messages and demonstrations. It showed the Vrexians human tools and showed the humans how the Vrexians communicated. Hana made breakthrough after breakthrough in understanding their language. The light patterns were not just emotions, they were a complex system of grammar and syntax. The clicks and chirps added context and detail. Together they formed a sophisticated language that was starting to make sense. 2 weeks after the standoff, Daewon's communication equipment picked up a signal. The rescue ship was 4 weeks out and closing fast. We need to tell them, Taemin said. The Vrexians. They need to know more humans are coming. Through Small One, Hana explained. Ships, sky, more humans. The Alpha's patterns flickered with concern at first, but Small One intervened, its patterns reassuring. Good humans, like these. Family. The Alpha considered for a long moment, then its pattern shifted to acceptance. When another young Vrexian fell sick 3 weeks later, it was Bora who treated it. The parents watched nervously as the human used strange medicine. But Small One's patterns were confident. Trust, family, and when the young one recovered, the parents touched Bora's head with the family gesture. The rescue ship arrived exactly 6 weeks after the beacon went out. The crew found something they never expected. Humans and Vrexians living together around the cave, sharing food and water, teaching each other. Captain Wei of the rescue ship stood in shock as the Alpha approached him, Small One riding on its shoulder. Hana translated through patterns and gestures. The Alpha is saying welcome to their world, she explained. They're willing to share it if we come in peace. This is incredible, Captain Wei said. First contact. True first contact. The Federation needs to know about this immediately. Taemin looked at the Vrexians, at Small One chirping happily between Hana and the Alpha, at Mira teaching a group of young Vrexians how to throw a ball, at Daewon showing an adult Vrexian how a tablet computer worked. We crashed on their world, he said. We could have fought until we were all dead, but instead we found something better. We found understanding. The Alpha touched his forehead with the family gesture, and Taemin returned it. 6 weeks ago, this creature had been ready to tear him apart. Now they were something impossible. They were friends. 5 years later, Kepler 442 was a joint colony. Human engineers worked alongside Vrexian builders. Human scientists learned from Vrexian naturalists. Children of both species played together in the settlement squares. Dr. Hana served as Earth's first ambassador to the Vrexian collective. Small One, now nearly adult-sized, served as the bridge between the species, the first to truly speak both languages. Captain Taemin watched the sunset from the settlement's main platform. The triple moons were rising, and the forest glowed with its bioluminescent beauty. A young human girl was teaching a young Vrexian how to draw, and they were laughing together in that universal language that needed no translation. We could have killed each other, Mira said, standing beside him. She had stayed on Kepler 442, unable to leave the world she had crashed on. We came so close, but we didn't, Taemin replied. We chose differently. We chose to see the person instead of the predator, the parent instead of the monster. The Alpha approached, Small One walking beside it. The old Vrexian's patterns glowed with peaceful green, and it touched Taemin's head with the family gesture. Taemin returned it, no longer afraid of those massive claws. What do you think the future holds? Mira asked. Taemin watched human and Vrexian children playing together, saw engineers from both species working side by side, heard the mixture of human speech and Vrexian clicks creating a new shared language. Hope, he said simply. The future holds hope. Small One chirped in agreement, its patterns flashing with joy. It had been the bridge that brought two species together. It had shown both sides that family was not about what you looked like or where you came from. Family was about who stood beside you when everything fell apart, who helped you when you were hurt, who chose kindness over fear, the human who had saved a child in the mud, the Alpha who had chosen to listen instead of kill. Together they had created something new, not human, not Vrexian, but something better. A future where crashed ships led not to war, but to friendship, where differences were bridges instead of barriers, where the scariest moment became the first step toward something beautiful. And it all started because one young pilot saw a child in pain and decided that some things were more important than species, more important than fear, more important than survival itself. Compassion, understanding, hope. That was humanity's real strength, not weapons or technology or clever tactics, but the ability to look at something alien and dangerous and still see the possibility of friendship, the courage to extend a hand even when claws were extended, the wisdom to know that the only way forward was together. The Alpha roared softly, and the pack responded from the forest. Not a war cry, a greeting. Welcome home. And in that moment, under alien moons on a world that had nearly killed them, the crew of the Dauntless finally understood. They had crashed on a hostile world and found something they never expected. They had found home.